Hello, my name is Luis Subias, and my group members are Matthew Albert and Morgan Brandt. And our topic for today is poverty in the level of child, United States, and globally. So let's look at some important terms before I get started. I have a few here. It's absolute poverty, poverty gap index, poverty headcount rate, extreme poverty, and average industry of poverty. So we're gonna start off with childhood poverty. Now, what does it mean to be in poverty? To get started with that is there's a lot of definitions out there, but mostly is that for a family of four, you need a basic standard of living for anywhere around wherever you are in the world. What I mean by that is that if you're living here in the United States and you got a family of four, you need to provide your family with different kinds of resources. For example, electricity, food, a house, clothing, things like that. And when you're in poverty, you can't exactly meet those requirements, or you cannot provide for your family with whatever job or income that you have. So therefore, you're in poverty because you cannot afford those things, your basic needs for your standard of living. So for childhood poverty, in 2011, 16 million children were living in poverty in the world. That makes 1 out of 5 kids. So just think about it. 1 out of 5 kids out in the world is living under poverty, and that means that they don't have the basic necessities to meet their standard of living, no matter if they're in the United States or anywhere in the world. That means they probably don't have food, no clothing, nowhere to live, and that's pretty substantial for children. Formula government was designed in 1960, and what that means is that the government is now providing assistance for those who are in poverty so that they can get out of poverty. Because usually, what people seen in the past is that if you don't help out those in need, they'll stay in need and they can't grow out of that because they have no other way. All they do in life is just basically keep on living and surviving without having to um, find a way out of poverty. 45% of people who spent at least half their childhood in poverty um, end up being in poverty themselves later in life. And that is quite a problem if you think about it, because I mean that's not the right way to go. I mean, basically, if you're living in the United States, you're in the country of dreaming, the country of just living an expectation and pursuing your American dream. So then, if that were to happen, then in other words, not a lot of people are moving forward, and that's what really hurts the United States a lot. Anywhere in the world too, as well. Um, the United States is in the top five of childhood poverty. Others include Mexico, Chile, and Turkey. Um, you're thinking that one of the richest countries in the world, how is childhood poverty still a thing? Well, because of a high population, as well as the demand and quantity, and also the price and demand of things that basic necessities that people need. In other words, that if so many people need a basic necessity like water or food, that the price is gonna go up because the demand is so high, so that the prices go up. And if the prices go up, then they can't necessarily afford it anymore. So now, what do? I mean, it makes it very hard for people in poverty to provide for themselves if things always keep going high. I mean, and they're not the only ones who want that. People who obviously have their income at a very well rate, and those who can afford it obviously just keep going and buying it even if the prices go up. Poverty after the 1980s has developed in a better way. I mean, back in the day, childhood poverty was pretty high, but now it's not as high as it was before. And in 1980, the World Bank collects data from poverty through household surveys in 1981, and that 44% of the population that lived in the United States was in absolute poverty, and that was a big number. So then, what happened is that the government finally found a way for them to start moving that out, to move out of the childhood poverty, or basically poverty in general, from the public. And 1 billion people lived in extreme poverty in 1990 and was reduced to 705 million people in 2015. So you can tell that people are moving in the right direction out of poverty, but it's still pretty high in this country. I mean, 705 million people, that is quite a lot of people. So, and the survey started in 1802 when they started looking at who was in poverty and who was not, and it goes up until 2015. If you were to look at a graph that is in our PowerPoint, and you can tell that from the number that from 1820 was very very high. I mean, almost 100% of children or people in the United States, I'm sorry, not in the United States, the world lived in absolute poverty, and that's crazy. But then the Industrial Revolution happened, and of course things started moving in the right direction. Jobs started happening. People were able to find food. Things came easier. Products were easier to be made, and became cheaper, more accessible. And that's the movement of world. Like first world countries and second world countries moved in the right direction because of the Industrial Revolution, and they were able to provide themselves with a job, money, income, and therefore they could buy for their families, provide for their families, and move in the right direction, which is why the number has dropped significantly over the last 200 years, and that's pretty amazing. The evolution of extreme poverty headcount ratio number was the number of people whose incomes were under the line of basic necessities. So what I mean by that is that the average person to survive in the United States, for example, was, let's say, $25. I'm sorry, $100 a day. So if people were making under $100 a day, then they were considered poor or in poverty, because in order to provide for your family at the fullest, you needed to make $100 a day. But if you're making 75 or 50 a day, then you're not exactly making enough to provide for your family to meet a standard of living which is considered in this country okay. But I've seen many people around this world who make it happen. They pull through, and of course it takes a lot of work. People live paycheck to paycheck, and it just becomes a real problem here in the United States because of that. And but they make it work, and that's a good thing about it. Poverty headcount ratio used higher line at $3.10 a day in the world. Like, I mean, some people around the world are making that much money a day, and that's a problem. But there's only so much that we can do for the people outside the world. In 1930, there was the 1930s. There was the Great Depression. The Great Depression was a great example of how the not just the people who were in poverty, but the entire nation as well. And so the government saw this, and I took this opportunity to finally make a reform and move these people forward, and that was called free meals. And so the government provided assistance, food stamps, for people in poverty who were in need, so the government could help them pay for groceries. So poverty overall has taken a great toll in many of our countries. Will always be around, but it's moving in the right direction and going down as the time goes on. But with the help of donations and the support of everybody around us, it's easier to cope with, and hopefully in the near future will drop to a significant and tolerable level that we can all live with, but at least we can help and support those that we can. Thank you very much. That is all for me today.